Hello, everybody, and Merry Christmas to all of you. I wish you and your families all an amazing holiday time. I hope that all of you get to spend time with your loved ones, that you can share an amazing meal, have amazing conversations together, have new stories that you can tell all your loved ones and your kids. And I hope that you can watch a lot of Christmas movies, read amazing books, find some five-star reads, and yeah, just spend some quality time with your loved ones. That's the most important thing around the holidays. I am in my childhood home, in my actually teenage bedroom where I was sleeping when I was a teenager, and I've been looking around and appreciating all the little knickknacks that made this my room when I was living here. And typically it's a mom thing to embarrass their kids in front of people, but I definitely want to share one little piece of myself with you so you can see what I've been keeping here in my bedroom, something that I'd forgotten about. It's this little picture here. I don't know if you can see it well. This used to be me when I was maybe 12 or 13. This was my school picture, and this is definitely how I looked like, with the bangs, and always had the long straight hair, and just I was cute. I think I was cute when I was a teenager. And yeah, I don't think I've changed a lot when it comes to my facial features, but yeah, I definitely was a very kind of goody two shoes type of girl at school, and I used to love to read as well. So yeah, that's a little piece of myself from my bedroom that I can share with you. And now to tell you what I'll talk about today. In this video, I'm going to be doing my favorite video, I think everyone's favorite video of the year, which is gushing about my favorite books of 2022. It's going to be the best 22 of 2022 because I was fortunate enough to finish over 200 books this year, meaning that I had quite the opportunity to find a lot of favorites this year. So I definitely have 22 books that I can share with you that were favorites of mine. All of these books are 4.5 or 5-star reads for me. And what I'm going to attempt to do is, now I'm just going to share them all randomly, 22 books as I read them, and then in the end of the video I'm going to attempt to do a top 10 out of those books, because I'm notoriously bad at picking favorites, because everything that is a 5-star read for me is a favorite, almost everything. But yeah, I definitely have a couple of books that have stuck with me the most, so I'm going to share those with you as my top 10 in the end. Let's just dive in, because there's 22 books to talk about and I don't want to make this video too long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the books, so the name of the book and the author, and I'm going to share just some tropes and why I love the specific book so much. I'm not going to dive into the synopsis of the books, because I don't, otherwise we're going to sit here for a long time, and let's just dive in. So I do actually own copies for a lot of the books on this list, but they're all at my home where I'm not at the moment. But the nice thing is that I actually did order one book for myself that came to my parents' house, and I'm getting a gift from Santa that I'm going to wrap up later. That's also come into my home, and I'm going to start with that one actually. The book is by Kennedy Ryan. It's called Real, and I actually finished this at the end of 2021, and it's really an all-time favorite book of mine. I'm going to be honest with you, this book is stuck with me even a year later. I still remember it very vividly. The book is a romance between a film director and an actress who are involved in the same work project that is very important for both of them. And because they have a very strong work ethic, obviously they don't want to go into their feelings while they're filming the project, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to kind of hold back, because they have an amazing chemistry and attraction to each other. Both of them have amazing backstories. So really, Kennedy Ryan here depicts their life stories, and you really get attached to both of the characters, because Neva, who is the female lead, she has a chronic illness, while Cannon, he has a very interesting background, because he has an amazing relationship with his mother, and she is also suffering from an illness that has impacted his life a lot. And the nice thing about this book is that we kind of have a dual plot within the story, because we follow their story, but we also follow the fictional character story, so the singer story that they're going to be making a movie about. So you really have like almost two movies or two books within one setting, within one book. So it's just such an amazing story. This is a 5+, really a 5+ book for me. It's an all-time favorite, and if you haven't picked this book up, it's such an amazing read. I recommend it to anyone who wants to read a more emotional, more kind of substantial type of book. It has such amazing topics and tropes within it, and it's definitely worth the read. Another book that I think is an all-time favorite book of mine is by Tia Williams. It's called 7 Days in June. This book is a second chance romance, and it also involves a single parent trope. And I think that it's a favorite of mine because it really involves all the things that I love about the second chance romance. There is really a very vivid reason why the couple broke up in the first place, or why they didn't stand a chance to be together in the first place when they were children. And then a lot of years have passed in the meantime. They have evolved as people, they have changed, but their attraction or maybe their love for each other actually never changed, or maybe it even grew. And that's why the second chance does make sense in this story. And it was just such a beautiful read. I think that whenever you read a story that kind of makes you want to keep going but not finish, because if you finish the book then you're kind of left with nothing more to know about the characters, that's the type of story that makes you think that you've grown attached to those characters in such a way they've kind of become a part of you. That's the type of story that 7 Days in June is for me, and I absolutely loved it. It's again a 5+ star read for me, and I definitely recommend it. So I think that this is the time where I need to mention that there's kind of two categories of 5-star reads for me, 4.5 or 5-star reads for me within this list. One of them is like the type of read that is very emotional, that has made me feel a lot of things or think about things that have really impacted me in the long term. But there's also the type of reads that maybe are not as emotional, but were so fun for me, were so engaging, so entertaining that I could not put the book down, or I was so entertained that it really had me laughing out loud. Those are the type of books that I also give 5 stars. They may not be as emotional or may not have the same type of depth in the plot, but they were so engaging and so much fun that they've made me happy. And the type of book that I'm going to mention right now, this is the type of book that I'm going to mention right now. There's a couple of those within this list. So not all of the books are like very serious or emotional or whatever. Some of them are just pure fun. The next book I'm going to mention is The Summer Proposal by Keeland. I've mentioned this story a couple of times throughout my videos because I really liked it. It's a sports romance. I give that one 4.5 stars, but I've rounded it up to 5 stars. And it involves a couple who, he's a hockey star, she doesn't know that he's a hockey star, and they meet in a very strange meet cute where she's waiting for a blind date. He pretends to be the blind date, and then he kind of steals her from the said blind date. It's such a fun, engaging read. There are a bit of emotional aspects within the book at some point within the book, but they're not the main point within the plot. And it just really left me wanting to keep going and going and going until I find out how they're going to get there happily ever after. And yeah, it was a fun read, and I really loved it. Next up, we have a book by a favorite author of mine, Brittainy. I read the Mixtape this year and I really loved it. We have a plot where we have an R&B star who has gone through a very big trauma. He has lost one of his closest people in life, so he is grieving. And we have a woman who is a single parent. She's kind of struggling making ends meet, and she by chance has the opportunity to help him out, and she's actually a very big kind of a closeted fan of his, but she has the chance to help him out of a very difficult situation. And they kind of have first a friends relationship that develops and then eventually moves on into the lovers territory. I love Brittainy. I mean, everything that she writes is very emotional, very kind of tugging on your heartstrings, and really not in the type of way that makes you feel annoyed, but really makes you feel realistic and kind of, how do you say it, like very genuine affection towards the characters that she writes. So this is exactly the type of story that I am always looking for. If you have any recommendations that look anything like Brittainy Cherry's books, please drop them down below. I will pick anything up that will make me feel in the same way that her books make me feel. So yeah, this was another 4.5-star read for me, rounded it up to 5 stars, and I definitely recommend it if you haven't read anything by Brittainy Cherry before. It's a good start. It's a standalone, so you can definitely pick it. For the next one, I think that this book has ended up on the top reads of anyone who is on BookTube this year. It's Still Beating by Jennifer Hartmann. This one is a very dark romance, so please check the trigger warnings before you dive into it if you haven't picked it up yet. It deals with a lot of heavy topics because the hero and heroine have been kidnapped together, and they go through a very difficult 2 or 3 weeks that they're in captivity, and then they need to go back to their respective lives and try to move on from that traumatic event. In the meantime, he is her sister's fiance, so it's difficult within that respect. So it's a taboo, forbidden romance with a lot of traumatic events thrown into it. So I think it's maybe like a romantic suspense, maybe. But yeah, it's definitely an amazing read. It had me crying throughout the book, going through all of the difficult things that Cora and Dean were going through. And yeah, I really love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I think everyone who has read this book and has loved it has given it 5 stars. So yeah, it's definitely worth the read. Another book that I really enjoyed was The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I think that a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with the book because of the hero, Rowan. He's kind of the type of grump who maybe some people don't understand why he's grumpy and kind of feel like he's being very dejected, while the heroine in the book, she's the sunshiny type of character. She is an amazing kind of a badass type of female. She does not pick his, she doesn't pick his attitude, and she kind of lets him know whenever he's out of line. But I love this book because of her, first of all, but also because of the side characters. Her sister, who has Down syndrome, I love that portion within the book of how she is depicted. I love the setting. It's kind of a Disneyland setting that we have within this book, and I haven't read any books with this type of setting. And typically just the grumpy sunshine trope works for me. This book also has a workplace setting, so that works for me as well. I didn't give it 5 stars. I gave it 4.5 stars, but I definitely enjoyed it a lot, and I definitely plan on picking up the second and third book by this author in this series. Another book that I gave 5 stars to, because it's a fun book, not so much a very emotional book, is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. Again, a type of book that a lot of people either love or hate. I really loved it. I mean, I had so much fun with it. I know that it's a chunky book and that it could have been shorter, and that some things were not as well developed in the end as it could have been, but I just had so much fun with it. The book is a small town setting where we have a woman who has been called to help by her twin sister. She goes to this town. Everyone mistakes her for her twin, and everyone hates her twin, so they are kind of mean to her. But in the meantime, she gets mugged by her twin. She gets kind of left with her niece that she didn't know about. And this woman, she kind of needs to find her setting in this small town. There's a lot of kind of a found family aspect within the book, a lot of people helping her out, and I love that about the book. I love the setting, the small town. I love the fact that there was this alpha hero who was he was a very much of a grump, but kind of almost to the extreme, which I typically don't like, but within this setting it somehow worked for me. I cannot explain why it worked for me, but I really, really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I had a lot of fun with it, and it's just one of those types of books that is almost kind of a rom-com type of book. So if you're looking for a lighter read, this one should definitely do. What I don't mention a lot on my channel is that my favorite types of books are slow burn books, because I love it when authors really take their time to develop a romance between characters. And one such book that I read this year is The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. They're a married author couple duo. Am I saying this right? Anyway, this book I think is the better type of book to pick up when it comes to bookish books. So books that have a bookish setting. The book is a slow burn between two authors who met while they were in college. They wrote a book together. It became a success, but once it became a success, they had a falling out. And what happens is they have a book deal that they need to write another book, and they have had this falling out for quite a few years, but then they need to come together and write this last book together. So Booklovers by Emily Henry was supposed to be this success for me, but it wasn't. But I'm really happy that I found The Roughest Draft, which made up for it, because I really, really love this book. So we have essentially friends to enemies to lovers within this plot, and there were just so many situations that I could relate with within this book, of really, because the enemies to lovers trope for me usually is really taken to the extreme in most cases, and a lot of the times I think that it's almost a device to kind of grab the reader to like the book. But within this book, everything happened naturally. So the enemies aspect really was because they had a very realistic falling out, and because life happens, so you have responsibilities within your life, you need to kind of push through your feelings and come back and do your job. But that is very difficult to do if you're still holding on to a grudge. So it was very realistic for me. This is really the thing that really worked for me so well, and I really love this book. I don't know why it has a low rating on Goodreads. I think it has like 3.6 or something, but don't let it fool you. Please pick this book up and you'll see that it's a very good one. Another very fun book that I didn't expect to love as much as I did is by Megan Quinn. It's called A Not So Meet Cute, and I think that this book I really loved because I didn't expect to love it at all. The book is a fake dating romance between a guy and a woman who are very much opposites of each other. He is very much kind of not a recluse, but like maybe a more closed off type of guy, almost a grump, not very much a grump, but almost a grump, while she is very much like the sunshiny type of character, very extrovert. And there's just so many funny situations within this book. I laughed out loud in many moments within the settings of the book, and I really, really liked it. I don't know that many people have loved this book, but I really did. I had a fun time with it, so I gave it 5 stars. I'm going to talk about another all-time favorite of mine now, because it really has a couple of tropes that I love again within this book, and they are all done right within this book. The book is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, and I just love that book. It's a reverse age gap, meaning that the woman is older in this book and the man is younger. It's a small town versus big city situation. She lives in a big city, he lives in a small town. We have opposites attract. We have a woman who has had to deal with emotional abuse, and a guy who kind of is looking for how to make whatever he wants in life happen without losing what he's been working for a long time. And we have a cinnamon roll hero. He is just the best type of cinnamon roll hero. I love this book so much. I'm going to be rereading it. I annotated it the first time, but I definitely will be re-annotating it again because it just has so many amazing quotes within this book. If you haven't picked this book up, what are you doing? You need to pick it up right now. I've talked about the next book a lot because it comes up on different lists of mine, but I'm going to mention it again because I really loved it. It's Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. This book is set within the STEM world that Ali Hazelwood writes so well within. We have an engineer and a neuroscientist who are rivals, but then they need to work on a project together for NASA, and they need to kind of push their differences aside and work together. And in the meantime, they find out a lot of things about each other that they didn't expect. There's also a you've got mail type of trope going on within the book, which I loved. And yeah, it's just a very fun, engaging read. I think that Ali Hazelwood does an amazing job of keeping you engaged throughout the whole plot and wanting to just go on and on and on. I think I read this book within almost one sitting, so yeah, I definitely recommend this one. Another book that I had a lot of fun with is a book by J.T. Geisinger. It's Carnal Urges. It's the second book within the Queens and Monsters series that she wrote. This book I had a lot of fun with because of the dynamic between the hero and the heroine. It's a dark romance, a mafia setting between an Irish mobster and a woman whom he did not expect to kind of crush his expectations in his life, because he kidnapped her for a specific reason, but she did not go down without a fight. If you get what I'm saying, she is definitely more than he can handle. The spice within this book was just on point. There was a lot of banter. I laughed out loud again in certain periods within this book, and it's like I was getting into this book and I was like, is this a mafia or is this like a comedy? Is this a dark book or is this like a banter filled like goodness that I just did not expect it, to be honest. I really, really loved this book. I flew through it, and yeah, I definitely recommend it if you want to have a dark romance but with a bit of fun in it. The next book I'm going to mention is one of the few books that I'm going to mention that is not a romance. The book is called Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lin Tan. I read this book, I think, quite at the start of 2022, but I really, really loved it. I'm definitely going to continue on with the series. It's a young adult fantasy book that is focusing on the Chinese moon goddess legend, and it was just such an action-filled, very beautifully depicted story. I read it on audio, but I was just so engaged through it, and because I'm not familiar with the legend, it just seemed almost like an original concept for me. I really, really loved it. I definitely am getting more into the young adult fantasy genre because I read a couple of series this year that I loved, and this one is definitely one that I loved, so I definitely want to pick up more. So I'm the type of basic person who will definitely fall into the hype and love a book whenever it's hyped up. Within this next book, I do have to say that I read it before the hype. I read it when it just came out, I think. And the book is called Icebreaker by Hannah Grace, and I absolutely devoured it and loved it. We have a new adult sports romance. The guy is a hockey player, she is a figure skater, and they need to share an ice rink, so there's forced proximity. They start off a bit as enemies, they become friends, and then they move on to lovers. And there is just so much goodness within this book. The spice is nice. I loved it. And we also have a very good representation, in my opinion, of why people should go into therapy. The main heroine has kind of an abusive relationship with her skating partner, an emotionally abusive relationship. He also kind of almost drives her to have an eating disorder. And those are the topics that she needs to deal with when she goes to therapy. And I really love that aspect within the book, that we really get to see that she's actively trying to deal with those issues for herself, and also the fact that the hero is playing a key part within that, really supporting her through that. I really love those aspects within the book. I know that some people didn't love this book. They found it too long or boring, or I don't know what they found, but for me, I just loved every single aspect within this book. And I just saw that whenever I was researching all the books that I want to add on to this list, that this is actually going to be a series, and I just cannot wait to read more within this series. I love this world and I want to go back to it as soon as possible, and yeah, I definitely loved it. So the next book I also gave 5 stars to. I know that a lot of people are divided on it. It's It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. It's the second book which follows It Ends With Us, and this book was written kind of for the fans, and because I am a fan, and like I told you before, I'm a basic type of person, I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It follows Atlas and Lily, like the childhood friends who now have the opportunity to explore a relationship now that Lily has divorced her abusive partner. And yeah, I loved it. I know that a lot of people expected more or found that this book was unnecessary, but I just loved revisiting their world and seeing how their relationship progresses and how they revisit their pasts, and how we also see a lot of Atlas's perspective within the book. So yeah, I definitely loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and it definitely deserves a spot on my top 22 of 22. Another book that is not a romance that has ended up on this list is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I really love this book. It's a young adult paranormal story that has amazing representation for the LGBTQ community. We have an exploration of 2 boys who become best friends, and their journey of exploring their identities, their friendship, their relationship as it evolves, and also it has a paranormal setting. It's very atmospheric, and I read it around Halloween, so it really worked for me. I flew through it. I found it beautiful. The cover is also gorgeous. So yeah, I definitely recommend this book. Next book is another book that is not a romance. It's a contemporary fiction book that I think blew up a lot last year. And it's a book that I definitely appreciated, but had a very difficult time getting through because it deals with a lot of emotional abuse. It deals with grooming by a teacher with a student, and the emotional consequences for that person throughout their life, of how they were kind of manipulated when they were a teenager. The book is called My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and definitely look up trigger warnings for this one if you want to read it. I found it a very relatable story, even though I don't think like every single woman has gone through such an experience. I definitely think that every woman can recognize how easily it is to fall within the trap of someone saying the right things to you and you wanting to believe them. So yeah, it was a difficult read. It was a very heartbreaking read, but it was an important one for me. That's why I gave it 4.5 stars, and it deserves to be on this list. Another book that I've talked about a lot in the past couple of videos that I've posted, that means actually that it really deserves to be on the list if you ask me, is Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, which is the sequel to Legendborn. It's a young adult fantasy series, and yeah, it focuses on the Arthurian tale. I think that it's beautifully written, and I've really become very attached to the main characters within the book, and I really love the storytelling part within this kind of it is an urban fantasy because it's set within contemporary times, but the Arthurian kind of myth that goes into the story, I really loved how it's incorporated within the story. It made sense to me, and yeah, I definitely. And now I'm going to talk about the 2 books that have been discussed the most on BookTube, if you ask me, when it comes to maybe the last 2 or 3 months. I'm going to talk about Flawless and Heartless by Elsie Silver. First, I'm going to start with Flawless because that's the first book within the series, and it's one that I think is considered a sports romance because it focuses on bull riding. We have our hero Red, who is a bull rider. He has gotten into some media trouble and he needs someone to help him out with his image. This is where our heroine comes in, who her name is Summer. She needs to help him out, get his image straight, and she moves into his home and becomes his assistant essentially. So they have forced proximity. We have very much Grumpy Sunshine vibes going on. We have very much a heroine. We have a woman who Definitely does not take his shit. She just gives back as good as she gets, and there's a lot of banter within this book. There's a lot of chemistry within the book. The steamy scenes are on point, and I really loved it. I gave it 5 stars, but when it comes to a favorite within this series until now, at least, I definitely have to say that Heartless won me over. It's a 5+ star read for me. It focuses on Cade, who is Red's brother. He is involved in the ranch, in the family ranch in Canada where they live. And he is a single dad. He's looking for a nanny for his son. And he finds that in Summer's best friend, Willa, whom, yeah, if we had Grumpy Sunshine in the first book, in the second book, it's taken to the extreme when it comes to Cade. And Willa is definitely a sunshiny type of character as well. They have amazing banter as well, but maybe even better than Red and Summer. The single dad trope works really well within this book. The relationship between Willa and Cade's son is also amazing. It just leaves you wanting to know more about these characters. When the book finished, I didn't want it to finish, and that really gives you a sense of how good this book was. And yeah, I'm definitely waiting and looking forward to the third book, which is called Powerless, which will come out in a couple of months. And Elsie Silver is definitely kind of a new revelation for everyone within booktube this year, and we can't wait to see what you'll come up with in the next couple of years. I think that everyone who follows my channel knows that I love Taylor Jenkins Reid, so there is not a chance that there's not going to be a book by this author on this list. My favorite book that I read by this author this year is Carrie Soto is Back. I really love this book. I think that part of it comes with the fact that I love tennis, and the main focus on in this book is a tennis player who has had an amazing career. She retires and then she decides to come back because a tennis player who is within the new generation is threatening to break her tennis records and kind of take more titles than she has. So she's very competitive in nature, and she has the opportunity to work with her father, who will be her coach, to make a comeback and try to regain her ranking within the tennis world. I think that this book became a favorite of mine mostly because of the relationship between the father and the daughter, and also because I love tennis. So yeah, it's definitely one that I would recommend for everyone who wants to read more of a fiction type of book. This is not a romance, it's definitely a contemporary fiction book, but it also is a book that explores the family dynamics so well. I just loved her father so much. He made me cry, not with whatever happens to him, but with the things he says to her. The type of devotion that this man has within this book for his daughter is just so admirable. I definitely loved it. I gave it 5+ stars. We have finally come to the point where we're going to discuss the last book, and after that I'm going to tell you my top 10. The book that I read last that I'm going to include in this list is again by Kennedy Ryan. So we had a wonderful beginning with Real, and now we're going to finish off with the book that was released just about a month ago. The book is called Before I Let Go, and it's a second chance romance. It deals with a lot of emotional baggage for both of the characters, and it has a gorgeous cover. And I think that it's again the type of second chance love story that is done right. So we have a very apparent reason for why the relationship didn't work in the first place. And it's done in a very realistic way of how they get back together. So it's not really them having an attraction and just falling back into bed and then everything is all right. They really need to work through what happened in the first place for them to get to a place where they can try again. And it involves two people who were married, who got divorced, and who have children. And those children were very much impacted by their divorce. So it's very realistic in how that topic is covered. I just think that being married, being in a long-term relationship just requires so much work. And when it comes to writing a romance, oftentimes we just get to see the beginning of the story of how people fall in love and how they have some kind of a conflict and then they get over it and then they're happily ever after. This book really shows the long-term type of relationship very well. And I appreciated that so much. I really love these types of stories. If you have any recommendations which follow this type of pattern or this type of story, if you've read it, please recommend them to me. I want to pick up more. I'm dying to read these types of books. I already want to reread it. I loved it so much. This is a 5+ star read for me, and I love Kennedy Ryan with all my heart. She just writes the best types of books. They always make me cry, and not in a bad way, always in a good way, just crying out of pure emotion. This is the type of book that I'm longing for in any type of situation. Please recommend to me more of these. So I've written down my top 10. I think if you ask me tomorrow, it may change, but the top 10 for now, at least, is as follows. Number 10 is Flawless by Elsie Silver. Number 9 is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. Number 8 is Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. Number 7 is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartmann. Number 6, number 6 is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Number 5 is Heartless by Elsie Silver. Number 4 is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Number 3 is Real by Kennedy Ryan. I thought I was going to put it in number 2, but I put it in number 3. Number 2 is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. And number 1 is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This is my top 10 when it comes to my favorite reads of 2022. Please share with me what your favorite reads of this year are, whether they're the same as mine, whether you have any other ones that I may not have read that I definitely need to pick up. And tell me what you thought about all of the books that I talked about here. I would love to know what you think about them as well. I wish you an amazing Christmas week, wherever you are with your families. Like I mentioned before, just enjoy the warmth, the amazing times with your families and the love that you get to share together. And I hope to see you very soon in the next one. I definitely need to post my worsts list this week, sometime this week, so you can look forward to that one as well. I hope to see you very soon. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Merry Christmas. Take care and bye-bye.